speaking of crunches and games that kind of came out bad, I want to talk about the game that I've been playing. I've actually been diving into Cyberpunk. I think when we first started this show, we were like talking about how Cyberpunk was terrible, and I had it. I'd gotten it for Christmas, and I was on the fence about trying it. And I played it when I got it. So this is probably mid-January before the updates came out. And yeah, it was rough. Like it wasn't. Yeah, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. It was rough. It was not really good. I was playing it on the PS5, and I'm like, you know what? I love the aesthetic of Cyberpunk, so it kind of gets a benefit for me just in the fact that it is an aesthetic that we very rarely see in video games. Like that whole, yeah, for lack of a better term, the whole Cyberpunk genre, aside from like Deus Ex and a couple other smaller indie games like Katana Zero and stuff, you don't see a lot of that Cyberpunk kind of aesthetic, and so I was really excited to play it. Put it on the shelf, waited for update 1.2, and now I think we're on like update 1.22 or something like that. And I'm loving the game. I'm really happy. I'm enjoying it. I'm probably about 30 hours into it. And I've barely scratched the surface of the main campaign. I've just been going around doing side quests. I am literally playing the game as a cyberpunk, so very high, hacking skills, running around with a pistol, just shooting everything. And it's great. I wouldn't say the game is 100% fixed. There are still some times where like the game has crashed on occasion. It's probably crashing maybe every 5 to 10 hours. I'm getting a crash. I've maybe had 6 in total. But like usually it's right after it saves, so I haven't lost a lot of progress. Graphically, I mean, it's not the prettiest game, but I mean, it looks like a decent, last gen game, and so I find it's looks good for the most part. There's a couple parts where like things clip or I can't pick up items or something, but it hasn't been great game breaking yet. From the gameplay perspective, I'm loving it. I find the hacking and the shooting, like it all feels really good. Story wise, I'm absolutely loving. Like I said, I've barely scratched the surface of the main campaign, but I've just been doing side quests and trying to pick up chicks in this cyber world, and it's honestly a blast. So I mean, if you look at, you can see it's a nice game with rough edges, and if you look for those rough edges, you can definitely find them. But yeah, it's fantastic in terms of everything else that it does, and I think there is a really good game there, and I think it'll have a situation similar to The Witcher, in that I think in the long run, I think people will eventually come back around and say like, this is a really good game, especially once it gets its next gen upgrades and all those benefits. There's an awesome game there that just unfortunately came out in an incomplete state, and I think that is
at the worst possible time too, when people desperately needed it.
Yeah, I think honestly, if they had kept it until March, April, and launched it now, I think it would have done much better.
It also, if we weren't in a pandemic year, like it would have still had its detractors, but it would have been moved on too quickly because there would have been so much more out there.
Yeah.
Like there would have been so many more games to talk about, but because so much has been pushed back, it really festered for a while too.
Yeah, it came out because it was like the last big launch for a while. Like it came out, and admittedly it kind of fell flat, but it left a sour taste because there wasn't something to come and take its place, and that was, we had all kind of anticipated that Cyberpunk was going to be the game we were playing. And unfortunately it just failed. It had a failure to launch.
I mean, in my case, I'll know for sure when the next gen update comes out, whenever that may be, if it's this year, even if it's next year. Like, it doesn't matter to me. If it takes however long it takes, it's fine. Like, I'm going to play it eventually. I keep getting tempted because, like, I've seen the PC version go for, like, $30 sometimes on sale, and it's like, ooh.
Yeah,
nope, I'm waiting. Like, it's hard, but...
That's why I let's just start this topic, because I was on Reddit, and someone was like, hey, like, they have this on sale, and this is in the States for, like, $30. Like, should I grab it? And I would say 100% for $30, it's definitely a game worth picking up, especially because you do get that free upgrade later on in the year when that comes out. So
but
I think
if I wait longer, what if I get it for 20?
Well, here's how I would kind of say it is, like, if you are dying to play it, like if you were really excited for Cyberpunk and you were turned off or dissuaded by the fact that it didn't launch well, I'd say get it now. Like, I think it's a point now where it is playable. It is a lot of fun to have. It's more fun than it is frustrating, and like the rough edges and like the problems that it does have are minor compared to the fun that I'm having. If you have no interest, if you are completely against it, yeah, sure, wait for the next gen. And I think the next gen is definitely going to be better. But for me, I was too excited about the idea of playing in a post-apocalyptic cyberpunk kind of world. And for me, like, very rarely does that sort of thing come along. And for me, I wanted to play that. And to be honest, I am loving it. I'm enjoying it. It's basically whenever I have time, that's what I'm doing as I'm playing. I'm playing Cyberpunk, and I like I said, I'm just enjoying living in that world. It's not even about the main story. It's just that world that they've built. That being said, I know I'm thinking like people are gonna be like, oh, but like the world feels dead. Unfortunately, yeah, like the world is weirdly empty at times, but I don't know. The ideas that they had there were really cool. So like, it doesn't feel like a Grand Theft Auto 5 in the sense of like, oh, it's a whole lived-in world. Like, there's really some quiet parts of the city that like, it's weird that it's quiet, but there's also parts that do have some people. And so it's not, once again, it's not completely.
But again, we're also talking about a version that probably shouldn't have been made in the first place, because it seems like this game wasn't going to work with a previous gen console.
Yeah, I'd be curious to kind of see what happened at CD Projekt Red to have this happen, but like I imagine it was one of those things that they had unfortunately signed contracts and agreements, and like the fact that
they probably intended it to be out for PS4.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably meant to be out on that at that point, and then it just took so long to develop that they were like, well, fuck, we might as well do it for the new consoles because it'll make a big splash.
Well, I think the idea is, I think in a different world, like they should have, I think they announced it too early. That was the problem that they had. And so I think that if they had pivoted and said, yeah, we're going to make this a next gen console, but like, if you remember, they had a situation where they had an Xbox console specifically like designed for Cyberpunk. And so you can't really make a Cyberpunk edition Xbox.
Yeah, but it was an Xbox. It was an Xbox One, though, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing.
So like that's what I mean is I think they intended to put it on that console. It's just once they took longer in development than they thought, I think they realized, well, shit, now we definitely have to make it for next gen because that's going to be the expectation.
See, I think
and that's where everything went off the rails.
See, I think it might have been something opposite where they were like, shit, this is not going to land on PS4 and Xbox Series or Xbox One, but we now have contractual obligations, especially with Microsoft, because they are making that Cyberpunk Xbox One, and so they're now their hands were tied that they had to release something like that. I think if they could have, they would have just dropped it and just said, yeah, we're next gen and PC.
I mean, if that was the case, then I'd say they're really stupid for signing a contract about getting a Cyberpunk Xbox One made when they weren't even sure they would be able to make the game for it.
Well, I imagine that the situation, I'm coming across as very apologetic for them, and I'm not trying to, but I think it's probably one of those, that deal was probably inked long before they decided that this isn't working well.
If they inked that deal long before, then you would also imagine too that logic would dictate that they probably intended this to be on that console because they figured that was the pathway. I mean, maybe it was just them grossly underestimating how hard it was going to be to make something of that scale on there. Maybe it's also their fault for making essentially a PC-heavy game for a console that wouldn't be able to handle it. So there's a lot of things. I mean, either way, it was gross mismanagement on their part for thinking it was going to work.
100%. And I'm not trying to excuse that situation. Like, it was a crappy situation that they were in. But going back to where I'm at, I would say it's fun. I'm loving it. It's not as bad as it was when it first came out. And if you are interested in this, I would 100% recommend going to grab it. It's a win-win situation. Play it now if it's hitting the boxes that you're looking for and you're enjoying it, great. If not, hold off and just wait for the next gen, and you will get it with that when the PS5 and the Xbox Series X come out.
I mean, even if you don't have the PS5, like even if you have it on PS4, like if you wait for the next gen update, it's going to be pretty well patched by then too. So
yeah. So for me, how I'm doing it is I'm playing the main campaign on the base game on the PS5, and then I'm not going to play the DLC that comes out until it's been updated for PS5, and that's how I'm going to experience this. And I'll probably do a second corpo playthrough once that PS5 version comes out. But yeah, so Adam, I would recommend, if you see it and you're interested, go grab it.
Nope, I'm waiting for the update.
Fantastic. Glad I had an impact.
I've already told myself, no, wait until the update, because you at least know that you're going to get what the game that they probably intended to release. So
for sure.